Your 40s are your last chance to build real wealth. Your 40s are where most people quietly give up, not openly, not intentionally, but in the way they start playing it safe. They stop taking real risks. They settle into routines. They tell themselves, I still have time. But that's the lie. Because your 40s aren't the time to slow down. They're your last real chance to build serious wealth, not small progress, not side income. Something that actually changes your future, and most people don't realize it. Until that window is already closing, your 40s are where most people quietly give up. Not openly, not intentionally, but in the way they start playing it safe. They settle into routines, protect what they already have, and convince themselves there's still plenty of time to figure things out. But that's the lie. Because your 40s aren't the time to slow down. They are the time to get precise. This is the decade where random effort stops working, where trying different things without direction becomes expensive, and where every decision starts carrying more weight than it did before. You don't need more motivation here. You need better strategy, because by your 40s, you already have something most people underestimate: leverage. Not financial leverage yet, but personal leverage. Your experience, your skill stack, your understanding of people and systems. Your ability to see what works and what doesn't. The problem is, most people don't use it properly. They keep operating like they're still in their 20s, trying everything, chasing new ideas, restarting over and over again. But your 40s don't reward starting over. They reward building on what already exists. And that's where the first technique comes in. Technique 1. Stop starting. Start stacking instead of chasing something completely new. Look at what you already know. What skill have you used for years? What problem do you understand better than most people? What do people already come to you for? That's your base. Now, instead of replacing it, stack on top of it. If you've worked in sales, don't abandon it. Build a system around it. If you understand a specific industry, don't leave it. Go deeper and monetize that knowledge. If you have experience managing people, turn that into consulting, training, or scalable frameworks. Stacking creates depth, and depth creates value, because the market doesn't reward beginners. It rewards people who solve problems efficiently. The moment you stop resetting and start stacking, your progress begins to compound. But stacking alone isn't enough, because even with strong skills, most people still struggle to turn them into real income. And that leads to the second technique, Technique 2. Shift from effort to output in your 20s and 30s. Working harder can still move you forward. In your 40s, that approach starts to break down, because time becomes limited, energy becomes more valuable, and effort alone stops scaling. So the focus has to shift. Instead of asking, how hard am I working? You start asking, what is this producing? Every action needs to connect to an outcome. If something doesn't generate income, build skill, or create leverage, it becomes optional. Not everything deserves your time anymore. This is where most people get stuck. They stay busy. They fill their days with tasks that feel productive, but don't move anything forward financially. Meetings, planning, overthinking, endless preparation. It feels like progress, but it's not. Because progress is measured by results, not activity. And once you start filtering your actions through output, something changes. Your days become sharper. Your focus becomes clearer. And most importantly, you stop wasting time on things that don't pay off. There's another shift that becomes critical in your 40s, and most people completely miss it. They keep trying to grow by doing more themselves, but that model has limits. Which brings us to the third technique, Technique 3. Build around leverage, not labor. If your income depends only on your time, your growth is capped. There's a limit to how many hours you can work, a limit to how much you can personally handle. And in your 40s, that limit becomes very real. So instead of increasing effort, you need to multiply it. This is where leverage comes in. Leverage means using systems, people, or assets to produce more than you could alone. It could be turning your knowledge into digital products, building processes that others can execute, creating services that don't require your constant involvement, investing in things that generate returns over time. The goal is simple. From I do everything to I build things that work without me. And that shift changes everything, because now your growth is no longer tied to your time, it becomes scalable. At this stage, success isn't about chasing more opportunities, it's about choosing better ones, fewer decisions, but stronger ones, more focused, more intentional. Because your 40s reward clarity, not chaos, and once you start applying these shifts, stacking your strengths, focusing on output, and building leverage, you begin to operate differently, not harder, smarter. And that's where real wealth starts to become possible. And this is where everything starts to come together. Because once you stop starting over, once you shift from effort to output, once you begin building with leverage, your entire approach changes. You're no longer guessing, you're building with intention. But there's one more piece most people ignore, and it's the reason many still don't break through. Even with the right strategy, execution's consistency, not motivation, not short bursts of discipline, consistency that holds even when nothing feels exciting. Because in your 40s, results don't come from occasional effort, they come from sustained action, doing the same high-value things repeatedly without needing constant validation. And this is where most people fall off. They start strong, they apply new ideas, they feel momentum for a few weeks. Then progress slows, results don't show up fast enough, and doubt creeps in, so they pause, they rethink, they adjust too early. And just like that, momentum breaks. But here's what you need to understand. In this phase of life, success doesn't respond to intensity, it responds to stability. The ability to stay on a path long enough for it to compound. Because compounding isn't dramatic, it's quiet. It builds in the background, slowly, until one day it becomes visible. But most people quit before that point. They expect quick returns. And when they don't see them, they assume something is wrong. So they change direction, and every time they do that, they reset the process. This is why consistency becomes your biggest advantage. Not because it's easy, but because almost no one maintains it long enough. If you can stay focused while others keep restarting, you automatically move ahead. And that brings us to the final technique, Technique 4. Ruthless focus on what actually moves the needle at this stage. You don't have time for distraction. You don't have room for low-impact work. Every action needs to justify itself. So you start asking better questions. What is directly increasing my income? What is building long-term leverage? What is actually moving me forward? And anything that doesn't answer those questions clearly gets removed. This is uncomfortable because it forces you to cut things you've been attached to, old habits, side distractions, even good opportunities that don't align with your main path. But this is exactly what creates acceleration, because focus is not about doing more, it's about eliminating what doesn't matter. And once you do that, your time expands, your clarity improves, and your results start to reflect it. So when you look at your 40s the right way, they're not a limitation, they're a filter, a phase where everything unnecessary gets stripped away. And what's left is what actually works. No wasted motion, no random effort, no chasing, just clear direction and consistent execution. And if you use this decade correctly, you don't just improve your situation, you redefine it. Because what you build now will carry forward into your 50s, into your 60s, into the years where most people are trying to recover instead of expand. And that's the real opportunity, not just making money, but creating control. Long-term, sustainable, real. So don't treat this time casually. Don't assume there's always more later. Because this is the window where everything can change. If you decide to use it properly, start stacking focus on output, build leverage, and protect your consistency at all costs. Do that, and your 40s won't be the end of your growth. They'll be the beginning of your strongest phase. If this made you rethink how you're approaching things, don't just agree with it, act on it. Pick one technique from this video and apply it today. Not when it feels comfortable now. And if you want more real, no fluff breakdowns like this, focus on what actually works. Make sure you're following. Because the next video might show you exactly what you've been missing.